All right, welcome and thank you for tuning in to our third and final day of the 2021 Agricultural Faculty Academy webinar series in the Preparing Students for the Industry panel. We would like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor Rainbird for helping make this event possible. Some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. I have muted everyone by default, so we won't be disrupted by any latecomers. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation unless you have a question for our panelists, as this will help minimize any background noise. During the presentation, if you do have questions, you can ask verbally, as I mentioned, or via the chat box if you prefer. I will be monitoring that throughout and will be relaying your questions to our panelists if you feel more comfortable asking that way. Since this is a panel, if you do feel comfortable and are willing or wanting to put your video on, please feel free. Lastly, without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists, Tyler Fields with Valmont Industries, Teresa Parra with Netafim, and Sahil Sharma with Lindsay Corporation. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Launch into some questions. I thought it would be great to hear some background from you all on how you got started in the industry and where you are at now. Tyler, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks. And good time today. Thanks for inviting me. Excited to see what we can do to get more students into the ag industry and irrigation especially, and being able to keep this going and move things forward. But I graduated from University of Florida with my agriculture engineering degree and went to work directly for a engineering firm down in South Florida. And from there, I went and opened up a dealership location for an existing irrigation dealer in South Carolina, and was able to be there and kind of see the ins and outs of the day-to-day in the ditches of everything that went on in the irrigation industry from a pivot dealership aspect. And that really helped me kind of get through and understand a lot of things from design aspect to dealing customer interfacing and even the technical side. And then from there, joined in with Valley Irrigation on the water delivery side, and have worked, now I get to work around the world on projects and engineering and design. So it's fun times and really a large irrigation background for me. Growing up in ag kind of led me that way. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Sahil, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you for having me today. I think this is a great forum for preparing the next generation into the irrigation industry. We sure do need new blood here. But as Nicole said, my name is Sahil Sharma. I'm originally from India. I started my bachelor's in agriculture technology engineering from India, then came up here, completed my master's in irrigation and biological systems engineering out of University of Nebraska at Lincoln, go Huskers. And soon after, as I graduated, I joined Lindsay Corporation, and I've climbed up to become the associate product manager, and I covered the Zematic brand, which is essentially the irrigation pivot structures for Lindsay Corporation.
Great, thanks, Sahil. And next up, we have Teresa.
Hi, thank you. Teresa Parra from Netafim USA, North American headquarters for Netafim, which is a global company. I've been with Netafim just for about 18 months now. A little bit of history on me. I actually started with my bachelor's in psychology from Fresno State. I was fortunate to go to school in sunny San Diego for a handful of years, where I completed my MBA and JD, law degree. Took a couple of years off, traveled around the country, starting a family, and eventually came back to Fresno. In 2008, I started with Lakos, which is in ag and other industries, separators. Then spent 6 years there, spent 5 years with a local winery and distillery, obviously very ag associated, and then was fortunate to join Netafim in late 2019. And I think this is my position here as Executive Director of People and Development, so have a lot to do with talent and skills and growing positions. We're definitely, last year we, even in the pandemic and through a partial hiring freeze, we still hired 46 people last year. And we're on track to surpass that this year. So having this kind of a panel and having the opportunity, I think is paramount to helping folks enter, even if they're maybe looking to change industries or change roles. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you guys for being here. A lot of what we hear from people in industry is that we need to enhance and have more students entering the workforce. So today I wanted to focus on what you guys think are some good qualities and just ways that educators can prepare their students to be better prepared and ready to go and serve in the industry. So a question for you guys is, what type of skills do you think potential employers would like an ideal job applicant to have?
I guess I can start off to go, but from a pivot irrigation standpoint, I think that electrical and mechanical backgrounds are really good to have, to be able to understand, how the pivot works and how everything ties together, and have the ability to mechanically, put that together, whether that's, in speaking, whether that's for pivot dealers or for pivot manufacturers, either one really. But, the dealership level is the ones in the ditch, and they're hiring all the time. I would say on all brands and all aspects, they're always looking for new people to come in and help. And so I think being able to get that background to, be able to go out there and technically in your mind put something together and then mechanically actually do it.
I can just go next. I'll second Tyler's words there. I think there's a huge opportunity if you have some kind of hands-on experience. I think that skill right there is something that develops your craft. But I think overall, this is a three-part thing that you are running into. Excuse me. So it's one is your functional, one is your human skill, and the other is your craft. So, and with Tyler's touched greatly on the craft side, but just some cross-functional skills, just having some technology aspects, some software skills that you have, and then human skills, having curiosity and integrity are going to be very much crucial as you enter the workforce.
Sorry, I'll go next. I'll just reiterate. I don't want to reiterate what they said. I agree with both of what Tyler and Sahil said, and I kind of say it's three-pronged too, but I kind of call it attitude, aptitude, and then experience. We really looking for somebody that shows energy and passion, right? Just about something. You can talk to folks who are kind of not seemingly very excited to chat with you. To me, is a flag right away. And then communication skills. I think that new generation is certainly different than my generation. Has grown up with a different way of communicating using technology, and I think that being able to demonstrate that you can have a face-to-face conversation and think real time on your feet is super important to be thinking about not only what companies need today and what we need today, but going into the future. I think that building relationships is never going to not be important, right, in business.
Ms. Teresa, I think you need to say that a little louder for those in the back, because that's an awesome point, without a doubt.
Was I hard to hear?
No, I'm just, no, not this time. Figure of speech, but no, I agree. And I think that the communication style is again, whether they're dealing with end customer or with dealer relations, it's communication is key to a lot of that. But I think you hit on something else of just the desire to be involved in irrigation is huge. And without that desire or vision, it's hard to teach desire and it's hard to teach vision. And so if somebody wants to be involved, then they're going to be willing to do more to make it happen.
Some great feedback, you guys. Thank you. In addition to skills, what prior experience do you all as employers like to see from someone who's just graduated, whether that be, internship experience, work experience, volunteer experience? What are some things you kind of look out for from students' resumes as they enter the industry?
I'll start on this one. In my opinion, like hiring a recent graduate is very similar to an NFL draft. Like you know that coming in, the industry recognizes that they're hiring somebody that's going to get trained on. It's good to have some some good experience of your own expertise, but they realize the industry is actually making an investment in you to make you better in your into what you're going to do in your responsibilities. So having said that, I would say the experiences are more, we got to change that wording a little bit to say relevant experiences, because we really need to concentrate on how can you show that you have done something that a company or the position actually is looking for. So if it's say a technology role, or if you're going for an engineering role there, you would want to have you do want to show you have a good strong background as well as some good grip of your fundamentals. But at the same point of time, if you're going more into the business side of the things, you would want to show that you have gone out of your way, if you may, into developing something that was not necessarily required from the get-go. And another thing I would say is that I guess graduates kind of have to get into the position that there's always going to be a hidden layer to the actual requirements of the position. So you always have there's never just whatever's written is what's required. There's going to be a little bit more, and that kind of defines how good and how fast you grow into an organization, depending on how well can you adapt yourself into those situations.
I'll go next. I agree again with Sahil. It's very good feedback there, and I agree that I think prior experiences, because it doesn't necessarily have to be right in a paid workplace setting. I have a 20-year-old son, and he was going for his first job, and I said, "What are you going to say, about why they should hire you?" And he was like, "I don't know, Mom. It's my first job, right?" And so just what did you do during high school and college, again, to invest in yourself? You talked about investments, Hill. I agree. We can provide an opportunity as an employer. We can provide career development opportunities, but it's the employee that owns that, right? And that has to take the opportunity and the advantage of that. So what have they done for themselves to set them apart from other candidates, I think is huge. Make the experience relevant. Think about that right before you go into the interview, that you already know, like, I was in athletics, or I was in the band, or I was in this academic club, and this is what it provided for me. And I think that's relevant because super important.
Yeah, I like all those comments. And I think to that same level of, just because there hadn't been a prior job, but there's been experiences. And I think having the ability to talk about those experiences is huge. And even if it's, I was at my buddy's family's farm for every summer for 3 summers, or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on. And I refer back to ag because that's really where I live. But, from an irrigation perspective all the way around, I think it's even, what did you learn? What did sports teach you? What did the different classes in school teach you to teach you how to learn? Are you able to actually come out here and be taught something? So how they need to be able to portray that they can actually receive something you're telling them or showing them, and then they can regurgitate as needed and take it to the next level, and be able to do the research and the data points, and be able to, there's a lot of things that we don't talk about on a normal basis of, and even in interviews, specific questions of, well, what'd you learn in college? Well, the number one thing is you learned how to learn, and your degree may not even be anything close to what you're trying to do today. But if you have the desire to go do it, and you're willing to learn something and the ability to learn, then it can take you to that next level. And I think that allows you to, bring that to the table. But obviously ag background is a plus if you want to hit that market, or any market you're in, right? Whatever background you're trying to be in, that's plus irrigation is huge as well. So, you know, seeing internships or seeing just summer jobs or, you know, anything that shows that they want to work, I think is huge at that point. So.
Great, thank you. And then kind of piggyback on that, do you think that there are any areas or competencies that students are lacking as they enter the industry currently, whether that be irrigation related or just in general?
I think that could be a pretty open-ended question depending on what's trying to get accomplished. But, you know, to beat a dead horse back to the pivot business is we work in 480 volt power. You know, if you're going to be a service position with a dealership or something, you know, that's not something they learn in college about, you know, and then just, you know, how to simple electrical things. And I took a few classes as an engineering student, but not enough to really prepare me for where I needed to be, you know, to do that. So I think there's several things when it comes to, you know, design stuff. I think they cover that really well, but I think software, you know, learning how to run different softwares that are current in today's markets, and then just more electrical probably. And you know, real life stuff of what's going on in today's industry, the newer technologies, and, you know, being able to keep up with that. But I think the electrical and technical sides are huge to touch on more in those classes than it is anything else to me personally.
I think one area that is valuable regardless of the industry, regardless of the functional area that you're in, there's always opportunity, and that is thinking about how to do things better and asking the why, the continuous improvements, I'll call it, you know, and not just settling for this is the way that this has always been done, or this is the way that we do it now. There's respectful ways to challenge the status quo. And I think that's a huge area that I'm not necessarily sure is touched on in education itself, but not being afraid to do that, I think is a really big plus.
I'll just second Teresa's opinion there. I think that part, the open challenge part, in a respectful way, is kind of like a balanced equation, which is a subtlety, but it's also something that formal communication levels is something that I would say is a big challenge for students to right now, and educators as they plan on making those students prepare for the industry. I think those subtle communications and the formal communication skills would come in very handy. Secondly, I would say there's the new workforce, even though they are very much aware of it, but when it comes to the craft, it does become actually a little bit of a drawback from them, is the fact that you are now in a global scale. Like within the recent coronavirus thing, we've seen this, how global economies can get impacted by just one thing breaking down. So just having that global outreach in the back of your mind, even when you're doing a small scale, very concentrated job, is very much necessary, because that makes you ready for things to come.
Great. And Tyler, you mentioned, you know, educators, you know, giving up-to-date information about technologies and softwares and programs and that kind of thing. Do you have any resources or places, you know, that they can look this information up and stay up to date with that? Or is it really, you know, on each individual company's websites, or is there kind of some resources where they could find this information to share?
Yeah, most of it's going to probably be on websites. And then of course, you know, as we throughout the country, you know, most every irrigation business has, you know, regional representatives that are able to, you know, be in touch with, and they're able to really bring stuff along. The other side would be, you know, hopefully this year goes all smooth and we're back to, you know, full out farm shows, and, you know, there's big shows in multiple regions across the country, and that gives a really good opportunity yearly to know, see, and touch and feel, you know, the new stuff that's going on, and make those relationships with some people from the factories to, to be able to stay up to date on stuff like that. There's really, there's the irrigation.education website that really does a lot of good to be able to kind of give basic information about a lot of different things, to keep up with and stuff like that. So I'd say those are probably the best ways in my mind to go about that.
Thank you. In addition to, skills and experiences, are there any certifications or trainings that students could achieve before entering the industry that might make them more desirable candidates?
Of course, any of the IA certifications would be wonderful, right? I think we're supposed to say that, right?
Thanks for the plug. Love that.
No, for real though. I mean, there's a lot of things that are good through the IA that would help students get well prepared. If they're in engineering, there's the national engineering, whether it's civil, ag, mechanical, there's all the clubs or societies that, are a part, and they have some of their own materials and certifications as well, and then kind of knowing some of the NRCS stuff that's available, to be able to talk through and understand how to get. So I would say that I don't know of any specific one, but ones that are related is just a huge plus to have that.
I will kind of go back to what Teresa said a couple of questions ago. Is irrigation, having an irrigation and ag background also makes you very much a good candidate for something that's not at all ag related. Like it could be, there are a lot of cross-functional roles in an organization. So don't be afraid to expand, I guess. If you're interested in something else as well, having the ag expertise kind of gives you an extra edge, not necessarily against, a standard, let's say, who's just coming out as a standard commercial role, if you may. So that utilize your ag expertise if you have an irrigation background, and make that your strength. Of course, as Tyler mentioned, if you're going to stay in like technical roles, there are a lot of good certifications that IA provides. And myself, I was in the E3 program. That's a great program to be in. That kind of gives you a good jump start into talking to the industry, because the people from the industry is actually sitting in the class with you, and they're getting their certification points out of that. So that's a good thing to go for. So I would definitely encourage people to try that E3 learner program as well.
Yeah, I don't really have anything earth-shattering to add, other than I think some things that have been said on prior questions, which is, the willingness to go above and beyond, and that you can show that is going to make you a more desirable candidate. And attending industry events, I think, is super important. Having kind of that network of individuals that are already in the industry, because things are changing too, and new opportunities. So I think that as much as you can go, even to here locally, we have the World Ag Expo. It's a huge event, right, over multiple days, and you just start talking to folks and getting their cards and their contact information. Hey, can I call you, some next week or whatever, and see what you might have available. Don't be afraid to make those connections. I think that that's super important, because they're going to remember you, and they're going to call you before they just look at a resume and that kind of thing. So yeah, don't be afraid to stick your hand out when you can and shake.
I'd like to just add on real quick on Teresa, but I think that's a great point, that you need to be fully open to stand out, like, and not necessarily, not your resume is one thing, but actually physically being there and having a conversation with somebody is actually great. And I would always encourage people to be honest in that, like read up on the company that you're interested in, see what they do, and how are you going to add value to it. I think that's one piece of training missing, is how do you make yourself look, for lack of a better term, useful, right? So it's very much how are you a perfect fit for the role? Not necessarily they might not have posted it, you might not have seen the job opening, but it's just simply that how well would you fit into the culture of the organization? So maybe that is one piece of training that I will encourage people to have, is start reading, like really look into what the organization does.
Great advice. Thanks, Sahil. This is kind of a two-pronged question. So how has the ag irrigation industry changed over the past 5 years? And with that, how can educators adapt to these changes to better prepare their students now and in the future?
Oh, this one is near and dear to my heart. So let me start with this. I kind of started right 5 years ago in doing the math. So it's, well, it is right 5 years ago when I kind of jumped into the master side and very close to the irrigation industry here. So I would say the biggest thing that has changed is the adoption of consumer technology. So today the farmer gets up and gets real-time status of the fields, looks at the equipment, gets what the market prices of corn is going to be, all before he grabs his first morning coffee. So that is a very big change in the ag industry. Is today ag is no longer stick to drive 250 miles all across different fields just checking on equipment. All those things have changed dramatically. If you're looking at the golf course maintenance, you're not actually going out to single individual pumps. Everything is monitored remotely. Everything is controlled remotely. There's automatic scheduling at that point, and it's looking at where the grass is not working right, and the automatic mowers are out there. That is going to have a very strong impact on what the consumer actually wants, what the farmer would want from the industry itself. So at that point, the industry is going to shift towards that. So if that happens, the workforce itself needs to also twist towards what technologies is going to have an impact on into what the demands of the future is going to be. So looking at that, I will say the educators, one thing that I will really ask the educators to look into is to how do you expand the horizons of the students from not just to what the crafts are, what the expertise are, but also adding maybe some general more information and general more education, which could be computer education, if you may, that can really help them understand the new technologies as they are get accommodated into the ag environment.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that, and technology is the practical application use of knowledge according to Webster, and keeping up with it can be difficult depending on which type of technology you're trying to keep up with. Are you trying to keep up with the latest and greatest phone stuff? Are you trying to do the latest, mechanized stuff, or, design, whatever it is? And so I think that, having the mentality to be able to, bring something new to the equation, but also how to do something different, is something that really is available today to be able to take its stuff to the next level. And I think that the way that it's changed in 5 years, I think we all would say that the adoption rates of computerized things are happening more and more, and letting computers make decisions and just verifying humanly and different things of that sort. And so I think, and then sustainability and efficiencies, right? So, technology has really changed a lot in that aspect, and keeping up with it is very difficult if you're not in it on a weekly basis. By all means, just kind of knowing what's going on. But as a student learning, just keeping up with the websites of new products being released, and things of that sort, of just knowing kind of what's hit the market, and able to gravitate to that, and see the brochures and look at the brochures and be able to understand what's actually being achieved, as I think is a huge step to be able to keep up with that adoption moving forward. And as we know, the generational change of old school farming versus new school farming, if you will, where you've got kids coming home from school that are wanting to take over the farm. They're wanting to do things differently. They're not the type that's getting up at 5 a.m. and having a cup of coffee and read the newspaper at the table. They're wanting to wake up at 8 o'clock and leave the house at 8:15 and be at work at 8 o'clock, and just being able to pull everything up on the phone. And so I think being able to work through and understand how to use things to their advantage is, I think, a big part of that.
I'll respond to that question with a little bit of a different perspective. I completely agree with my colleagues here on the obvious there with the technology and digital. What I keyed in on here was change in and of itself, that things are changing and things are changing more rapidly. And so I think for candidates and students to understand and be comfortable with change is important. So that change management piece, I think that if there's a way to include that in education, that would serve our upcoming folks really well.
Thank you, guys. Another question, I know you guys have kind of touched on this with all of your answers, but if you had to give one bit of advice to someone that was interested or about to start out in the industry, what would it be?
Be persistent in a professional way.
One piece. That's really squeezing it down to one sentence.
It could be a couple pieces too.
No, like if I really have to squeeze everything down to one sentence, it's going to be, your learning has just begun. Everything we've learned so far, we're going to apply it, but there's going to be so much more to learn. So you got to have always have that open mindset that your schooling didn't stop. It actually just began. So you're still going to keep learning.
Well, I opted to go last on this one because that way, if I needed to ditto somebody, I could, or I could think of something. And I think I thought of something. So I think that one thing I would tell younger kids trying to get in the industry is don't be afraid to try something new in a different spot. So don't feel tied to home. I know home's fun and everything else, but seeing other parts of the country is huge when it comes to experience and seeing how things are done, because there's a lot of places in this country that things are done really different, and things can be done really different in the same region. And so being localized to just one spot is very difficult to take that to another level of national and even global, depending on what the career goals are. So my advice is don't be afraid to move and try something that seems interesting.
Well, I will second that every day. I moved 8,500 miles from my original place of origin. So they're definitely moving will open your perspective quite a bit. It will help you look at other people's problems the way and kind of like connect to them in a different way, and understand that how your experience can help others, and then what can you learn from others' experiences. So I think it's a great piece of advice, Tyler.
Great advice, you guys. We do have one question from one of our attendees. Are there more opportunities in the industry for community college students or students from four-year colleges?
Both.
Yeah, that's what I say. I think both. It just depends. I think it depends on what part of the industry you're looking to go into. I think if you're looking more for a professional functional area like accounting or something like that, then for sure, right? We're going to be looking for that 4-year degree. But we have a lot of opportunities in technology, I'll say the technical side and field side, and for sure, like in our plants, and we have leaders in our plants who've worked their way up to supervisors and managers and things like that. So I think both, but I want to reiterate what Sahil said, a last question, which is being a lifelong learner too. I think that you need to not be satisfied with what you bring, but always look for whatever that means, whether that's at a public, institution, or whatever that might look like for your development, that you absolutely need to look for those learning opportunities and take advantage of those.
And I would just echo, if you go out to, Valley, Nebraska or Lindsay, Nebraska, there's a ton of folks that are needed for welding and manufacturing. And so, 2-year degrees and even just a technical degree of sort, is huge. And we lack that. I think everywhere lacks that in all the industries, even, Ms. Teresa, in y'all's manufacturing, I'm sure there's always a need, and there's never a moment they go, HR goes, we're not hiring anybody anymore. I don't believe that ever happens. And so I think you have just as much you have a better chance of landing a job you enjoy if that's the direction you want to take, and just get that 2-year degree or even technical degree. And then to your point, Ms. Teresa, if you're going to something that's specific, if you want to be an engineer, well, then you probably need to go get an engineering degree and be able to take that to the next level. You can't just walk in, with a 2-year associate and have some sort of engineering, job. So, unless it's a technician of sort or something. So.
Yeah, I would second everybody's, Teresa and Tyler's points have been amazing on this, and they're right. There is really not that big of a difference. It's just the difference is only going to lie in where do you start? Like if you're in a community college, life happens. A lot of things happen in that you can have a community college degree and enter the workforce, but that doesn't necessarily needs to be where it is. There's a lot of growth opportunities within the organizations that may have been because you got it at this certain level, but you always can go up to the others. Also, when you have a little bit more comfortability, when you've gained even more experience, you can always get better at other crafts of the trade. Get further education. There's always those options there. And I guess my point being even that 4-year degree is only going to the difference between a 2-year and a 4-year degree is only going to be what would be your specialization, essentially. That's where it all lands. At the end, once you're in, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or a welder. Everybody's doing a job, and everybody has a job to do. It's simple as that. And nobody can, the company can't work without anybody. So it's a well-oiled machine that makes it move. So once you're in, you're in, and at that point, you're part of a team and part of a family, and you got to grow together.
Great feedback. Thank you, guys. One question, and Sahil, you might have since you are more recent to the industry, this might be a question that you would have a great answer for. But what do you know now that you wish you would have known prior to entering the industry?
Yeah, a lot of things, but I guess the most important of it all was just that experience. Which actually gets quite a bit. That's something that gets thrown around a lot. That the terminology, but I guess the experience itself, it's experience. It's just it teaches you to adapt to situations faster, and that's what it is. It's just everybody, even at the highest levels, is still adapting. And if you are adapting, you learn to adapt. That's going to be the key to success. It's always going to be how quickly can you adapt to things. And the people who are willing to do that, who are willing to put in the extra effort, more than what it's required, if you may, to really look forward to what's coming next, are always going to be the people who will succeed faster and who are always going to be more successful.
Tyler or Teresa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, from an engineering perspective, I wish going back, I would have sat down with somebody and really thought through what an engineering career would look like and what I need business classes or what I need some other communication type class or something like that. And that's probably, I'm not going to call it a regret by any means, but that's something I wish I would have probably done a little bit more of when I was, in school and able to make that happen. So that's, one thing I would say. And probably going and shadowing more or less in the kind of career that I'm looking, that I was looking for, and just really understand that's where I want to be.
Yeah, I think for me, I came into the industry not necessarily with the plan to, but I had the opportunity to, shifting from professional services environment, which is very different. So had I known prior to entering the industry that I was going to have the opportunity, I would absolutely have learned more on the technical side. Now I get to go out to the field and learn there, but it would be nice if I had more understanding from that angle. And then the other thing, I think I wish I would have known that in this stage, I guess, of the world, we would be so close, right? We'd be so global. I think when I started in the industry, we weren't so global that, you know, you can have these communications and things with, you know, folks in halfway across the world. And it's so normal now, whereas it wasn't even, I'll say, 10, 15 years ago.
Awesome, thank you. And for those of you that are in the audience, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask verbally or put them in the chat and we can make sure our panelists answer them. So we've talked a lot about, you know, skills and certifications and, you know, what you guys are looking for in students as they enter the industry. On the flip side, do you guys see any challenges or obstacles for students as they try to enter the industry?
Willingness to work. And I think that's a challenge. Hill's laughing. I think it's a challenge that we all face in today's world. And there's a generation that's grown up that's different. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just different. And I think that helps drive kind of what they want to do. You know, from what I can tell, every kid that comes out of college wants to automatically be a salesperson making $90,000 a year with a, you know, 4-year degree in business. And that's just not the way the world works. And you've got to work to get there. And instant gratification is hard to overcome. And so I think that's the one thing to try to get to understand is, again, don't be afraid to try something, you know, to see if you like it, because there's a lot of good things out there. They may not just be ready for you day one, and it takes time to get there. And yes, one of your buddies may land an incredible job making a lot of money and seems like a dream, and you're not doing exactly what you want to do, but you're climbing up a ladder to do something you want to do, or getting the experience you need to be able to go off and do something else. But I think networking is that biggest deal, you know, to be doing now is, you know, knowing what you can do when you get out, but networking, I think Ms. Teresa's hit on that, you know, with maintaining those relationships and being able to utilize those to your advantage or to their advantage.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with Tyler there too. Don't have really too much to add other than, you know, he kind of said it, which is you got to be patient. You know, we didn't all get to our roles. This was not our first job, right? For sure. And you don't always know the path either. And so you may, let's say you apply for an internal promotion or something and you don't get it. It's, you know, don't be discouraged. What did you learn from that? And I really appreciate it when candidates ask me, how can I do better? What was lacking, you know, and to be able to have the courage to ask that question. Wow, that's huge. So I think, yeah, be patient and don't get discouraged, and just continue, and you don't know what's around that next corner.
Yeah, those are great points. I guess there's a lot of I guess grit that's required, and you gotta continue pushing on. Other than that, I think one more thing, just essentially what has changed in the ag industry is the same thing that's going to be an obstacle for the future irrigation experts. It's, for example, like right now the pivots. If you work on a pivot now, what's in the works and what's coming next from the smart pivot standpoint, the technology itself is changing so much that the relevant experiences are going to be new for everybody. So if the new workforce is coming in, it is very much essential that students as well as educators kind of get a little bit of more exposure towards what has changed and what has really been, you know, unchanged for the last 50 years that suddenly has been brought up into the latest 21st century, right? So these changes are going to help make them push their general knowledge to the limit and then expand it even further. So there's going to be one I guess challenge there to really grow into that aspect. And then secondly, not so much as an obstacle, but definitely I would say a challenge to overcome is how do you change the pure autonomy of it all. There's going to be the required workforce, the type of work, sorry, essentially is changing. So the autonomy, the introduction of autonomy in everything into the from manufacturing to business to actual application would mean that the type of work itself is changing. So we'll have to like adapt to those environments as we look forward into the next 5 or 10 years in the ag industry, and we really need to get our workforce into the mindset that, hey, you might start at one point, but you really are going to move into something that is really right now you might be looking directly into the pivot, but the pivot might become an autonomous machine in the next few years, and then you're going to be more of a watcher of that rather than the actual service guy, right? So it's that variation. So the jobs are not going away; it's just that they are changing. So that would be something that we need to be aware of.
Awesome, thank you. And one thing, as we try to grow our workforce here in the irrigation industry, from what I've seen over the past 5 years of me working in it, it's an industry that everyone that's in it loves, and they're proud to be a part of. So what's one thing that you love about the irrigation industry that educators can echo to their students?
And another thing that's very close to my heart, I guess. So I come from Punjab, which is essentially one of the most it's the worst cases of irrigation depletion in the world at this point. So my thought process of coming into this industry was necessarily to see how do you keep growing food without really taking off all the resources, and at the same point of time and how do you implement better resource management without really taking the profitability away from the farmer. So what we do here in the irrigation segment is not necessarily just watering down the crops or put the water on the golf course. It's much more than that. It's creating a cycle. It's developing not only the next generation of people who are going to make the decisions in the future, but also a cycle of a complete natural cycle of how the water was taken and now where it's going to go. So we are the stewards of how that water gets utilized. So I take very much pride in the fact that in order for humanity to survive, we're going to play a very strong role in that. And I think having the knowledge of that every single decision you're making is going to impact billions across the globe is something that's just I guess keeps me satisfied at the end of the day when I'm done working.
So I would add on and say that by from the Irrigation Association data points themselves is by 2050 we need to be creating growing 70% more food than we are today, and there's not new land being created. We have to be able to irrigate what we have, and we have to be able to move forward and be more productive with what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that having the desire to be a part of something bigger than yourself is something huge, to be able to take that and live it, because you have to love this life to live this life in the irrigation business all the way around. It never stops. When it's 110 degrees and the corn's tasseling, it needs irrigation, and farmers will go through hell and back to get irrigation going on that farm no matter what's going on, and they need help at that point, whether it's from a service aspect or parts aspect. Just they need help, and they need to know they can call somebody. And so being willing to live in this harsh environment and love it, to be able to drive to the next level and know that you're doing something that's bigger than what you are. And it's growing up in the ag business, I grew up on a dairy farm, and ag's always been very, very near and dear to my heart. And the other side of it is I want farmers to be very successful in what they do. I truly believe that farmers are unsung heroes of the American people, and they're what helps make this world go round. And so, to be able to be a part of that is something that I bring, that I'm able to bring myself to work, to know that I get to be a part of their solutions and help make them more productive, more efficient, and more sustainable for the future.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think being able to have that emotional connection and seeing where we fit in with our individual roles and how we create the impact globally, again, to be able to continue and even grow that resilient and sustainable food supply, that demand is never going to go away, right? It's only going to get greater. So being able to really, when you really stop and think how you contribute to that on a daily basis, you go to bed feeling good at night, and you wake up energized to come and continue to make those differences.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you, guys. Do we have, I know we're right at 3 o'clock, and I apologize for us starting a little bit late. We were having some technical difficulties with our dear friend Zoom. But do we have any other questions from the attendees before we wrap up?
There was a question I just wanted to say. I don't think this participant is in the meeting still. Charlie from Colleges of Sequoias sent a private message. I, for some reason, am not able to respond to it, but will our contact information be available, or is it available somehow? So I think that would be great if people want to contact me. Certainly, I'm happy to. I'd be happy to respond or whatever it is they're looking for. Yeah.
Great. I will definitely share that with our attendees then. I don't see any additional questions coming in. Do you guys have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our educators?
Good luck. God bless. Because I think you need it, and I'm very thankful for y'all and what you're doing for the for the industry in the local communities that you're in, and I know that there's a lot of heartache and headaches. So keep up the good work. So I think in your line of work, you got to love it to live it too. So we all have our own cross to bear, and y'all certainly are part of what makes the world go round as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess they don't call teaching a noble profession for any other reason, right? It is. I guess your guys' job is going to be is as difficult as anybody else, but you got that extra burden of making sure that the next generation actually has the readiness for all the challenges that we talked about today. So I guess for you guys, I think there's an extra bit of a hats off that you're working hard and fast to really be prepared for what's coming next. And on top of that, I would say feel free to reach out to any of us. I think we'll be happy to help on anything that you need. And I will recommend going into some of the resources that either that Google has a very great classes that they provide, or having some kind of a Coursera and such. So there's a lot of online courses that teachers can actually take on. Those are relatively couple of our classes and such that can really give them an extra bit of an edge as they're going into the classes and getting ready to talk to people, talk to our workforces. So that would be great for the students as well as for yourself. And feel free to reach out, and I thank everybody for all the hard work you guys done.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well to the participants, the panel, Irrigation Association, everything. I think bringing industry and education together early and often is going to continue to be what is needed going forward.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this panel. It was awesome to hear your experiences and advice for preparing the future workforce. With that wraps up our 2021 Virtual Ag Webinar Series. Again, thank you, Tyler, Sahil, and Teresa for sharing all of your insights and advice, and we certainly appreciate you being willing to participate in this panel. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.